I'm gonna shine.
I'm gonna shine.
Breathe fully in and out. I'm gonna shine.
I'm gonna shine.
Bright in the here and now. I'm gonna shine.
I'm gonna shine.
And spread love all throughout. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. No need to wait too long. You can start here and now by singing clear and strong and affect the world with knowing how to shine.
Shine.
Breathe fully in and out. I'm gonna shine.
I'm gonna shine.
Bright in the here and now. I'm gonna
shine.
And spread love all throughout. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. One more time. I'm gonna shine.
I'm gonna shine.
Breathe fully in and out. I'm gonna shine.
I'm gonna shine.
Right in the here and now. I'm gonna shine. And spread love all throughout. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. Let's tag it. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. One more time. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine. I'm gonna shine.
Boy, let your light so shine. Thank you, Mary.
Oh, that song brought tears to my eyes, and then, oh my goodness, that was beautiful, Mary. And I must say, everything that has preceded this moment has touched my heart, and it's a hard act to follow. So, today's theme is the will to live, and I had to add something to that because I think that all of us have a will to live. You know, if you plug your nose, at some point, instinct is going to tell you to release that, right? So that you can breathe, because we have that will, that instinct to live. But how about the will to live joyfully? Now, there could be a challenge. So that's what I'm going to speak on today. You know, most of us live in stress and striving, don't we? What would it be like if we lived mostly joyfully? Oh my goodness. It's kind of hard to even imagine an almost always joyful presence. But that's what we're going to talk about this morning. But I want to read a passage written by Ernest Holmes, and it's from Living the Science of Mind, and this is on the will to live. So he writes, "No person has the will to live unless he feels that life is worth living. And he cannot have a deep sense of the will to live unless he feels he's going to live forever somewhere. It is impossible to divorce this will to live eternally, this belief that we are immortal beings, from the best possible mental hygiene." Carl Jung was right when he said he had never yet seen one single permanent healing from neurosis without a restoration of spiritual faith, and that it's impossible to get the most out of life unless we believe in immortality. There is nothing complicated about this. We should stop thinking that it is so difficult to get our thoughts straightened out and begin to realize how easy it must be. For there is no mystery about it. We know that our thoughts are things. We know that our inward emotional reactions to our ways of thinking produce inward psychic and emotional diseases, which in turn give rise to most of our physical afflictions. And we know this happens because our thoughts are based on the negative rather than positive, on fear rather than faith, on disappointment rather than fulfillment, and on all other negative attributes that we could name. So, in other words, Holmes is referring to that negative self-talk that can destroy our ability to live life fully with health and wealth and joy and beauty and all those wonderful things. And he also says that it is as simple as becoming aware of catching ourselves in that negative, self-destructive thinking and instead choosing to have a faith that you, as an immortal being, is so grand that you can't even imagine it. As I read this passage, I couldn't help but think of an amusing scene from an old Bob Newhart TV show. And maybe some of you remember this, and maybe some of you have seen it on YouTube more recently, but I'm going to tell the story anyway because it deserves a review. So, a new patient walks into Bob Newhart's psychiatric office. And as she walks in, she says, "Shall I lay on the couch?" And he says, no, sit in the chair across the desk from me, and it's only going to take 5 minutes, and it's only going to cost you $5. Well, incredulous, she sits down in the chair, and he says, "What's your problem?" And she says, "Oh, I have this intense fear of being buried alive in a box. I can't even go through tunnels or be in the elevator or in a house or anything boxy at all without stirring up this panic within me about being buried alive in a box." And Bob says, "Well, have you ever been buried alive in a box?" She says, "No." "Well, have you ever been threatened to be buried alive in a box?" She says, "No." And he says, "Well, then I have 2 words that's going to solve your problem. 2 words for you to incorporate into your life. And those 2 words are," does anybody know? "Stop it!" And she says, "But it's compulsive behavior. I can't help it." And he says, "Stop it!" And she says, but what about my bulimia?" "Stop it!" She says, "What about my self-destructive relationships?" And what does he say? "Stop it." And she says, she's very indignant at this point. She says, "I don't like this therapy." And he says, "Well, then let me give you 10 words that will clear it up once and for all. Stop it, or I'll bury you alive in a box." So actually, this isn't too far off. When I find myself in that destructive self-talk, I do tell myself to. I do. Or I'll be buried alive in depression, disease, poverty, loneliness, and whatever. All that stuff. And then I find handy, which I keep handy all the time, some inspirational material to either read or listen to that elevates my thoughts and reminds me of who I am. I am too large, as are you, for any problem that makes me feel small. So, we're going to talk about your immortal self for a moment. The immortal self that both Holmes and Jung referred to. And your immortal self is that part of you that is an extension of the divine, the creator of all. And we have some other words, some other names to call ourselves, our immortal selves: the spirit self, your divine self, your higher self, your God self. And you know what? Throughout this talk, I'll probably be calling you all of those names. Is that okay? Okay. So, your immortal self is not your body, right? Your immortal self has a body for its various incarnations, the duration while it's here on earth. And your immortal body is not your personality, is it? Your immortal self is way too large to contain for your personality to contain it. So, why are we fixated on our bodies and our personalities? Does anybody know? I'm going to tell you if you don't. It's because our egos are in the driver's seat. Yep. Our egos have hijacked our lives. Now, there's a place and a purpose for the ego, but its place is not to be in the driver's seat. Our immortal self is who we want in the driver's seat, right? And so, actually, right now, I am giving a message to your ego self because your immortal self doesn't need any Sunday sermons. It already knows who it is. But I'm speaking to your ego self, and every time you hear a Sunday sermon or you have a self-help book or go to a workshop, who is being addressed is your ego self. Because we are trying to persuade that ego to let go of its grip on the steering wheel. Let go. Let go. That's all right. Let go. Get in the back seat. Just relax and take the ride. And let the divine be in charge. Whew. Whew, that feels good. Yeah. So, let's talk about our bodies. I wonder how much time and energy is consumed with thinking about our bodies. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I spend a heck of a lot of time consumed about this form. You know, when you look in the mirror, it is the ego that is looking at all the imperfections and stressing about it, right? Doesn't your ego just go, ah, when it looks in the mirror? And yet, our bodies are quite remarkable, and we should have appreciation for them, especially considering what we subject them to and what they're affected by. First of all, the gene pool, right? Some of us don't like our gene pool. But then there's the beliefs that affect our bodies and the programming and what we expose our bodies to in the environment. Oh, and what we feed it. I mean, how many of you just shove in the broccoli and the spinach? No, you want the hot chocolate and the sugar, all the sugary stuff, right? Holy moly, what's that doing to your body? We're affected by age and doggone it, gravity. It's like, oh. What about how we adorn our bodies? Hey, remember the Chinese when they used to bind the women's feet so they had cute little beautiful little feet? Oh my gosh, we torture our bodies. And some of us pamper our bodies. That's okay. You know, we can have great appreciation for our bodies because no matter what we do to it, it keeps on ticking, right? It keeps on going. But your body is not who you are. It's so important to remember that because too many times we forget. The body is just our earth suit that we chose and donned when we decided to have an experience on this earthly plane. And your ego may not remember why you chose this body, this gene pool, but you know what? You can have faith that it chose this body for a very specific reason. That there is something to be gained from your experience in this vehicle. And yes, this body is your vehicle to get around on this planet. And the good news is, the better you take care of your body, the better it will serve you. We must be good stewards of our bodies and take care of them, feed them well, and exercise them. And if we want the best experience while we're on this adventure, we must take good care of these bodies. And who is the ego to make a judgment about what your experience here is to look like in this body? Trust, have faith that whatever your experience is for your good. And speaking of the ego, well, let's look at that personality. And how many of us have ever in this lifetime worried that you are not good enough? Yeah, that's the ego. You're not good enough for one reason or another. Maybe some of you have outgrown that, and I certainly hope so. And maybe some of us are still stuck in it. So, how did you come to perceive yourself as not good enough? What experience gave you the notion that you are not good enough? And I want you to really bring that to mind. Recently, my youngest sister, Diane, told me how her self-esteem was affected by a little dumb ditty I used to sing to her when we were kids. I'm going, what? I affected you adversely? Holy moly. And then I remembered the ditty. Oh, how could I forget? It went like this. Dumb little die, oh dumb little die, dumb little die, oh dumb little die, dumb little die, oh dumb little die. Well, Diane was anything but dumb. She was the cutest little thing you could ever see, and so lovable and smart and funny and creative and talented, and she still to this day is all of that. Whatever made me sing such a song to her? Why did I do that? And I only have one conclusion. The devil made me do it. But of course, if I knew then what I know today, I never would have sung that song to her. I would have sung, Dear Little Di, Darling Little Di, Precious Little Di. And as embarrassing as it is to admit, I tell this story because I have a point to make, and that is your self-esteem might have been affected by someone doing something out of ignorance, and you took it to heart. As simple as that. Is that a possibility? Another story I heard about a woman who, for most of her life, felt unlovable because she had been abandoned, adopted out as a child. Later in her life, she learned why. Her mother didn't expect to survive cancer. And because she loved this dear baby so much, she didn't want to take care of that child until she died, making that child feel abandoned. So she adopted that child from the very beginning, sacrificing whatever days she could in raising that child. Instead, gave that child up at its very beginning of life to parents whom she hoped would give that child love and stability. Isn't it ironic living on this planet? All that time feeling unlovable and abandoned when her mother's very intention was to do just the opposite. So even if your esteem was affected by someone who was deliberately cruel, it is time to give up the lie. It is time to realize that it was your misperception of what you were subjected to as a child. Give up the lie and know who you really are, immortal self, beautiful divine self. Let the ego go. Let the divine take the steering wheel. And what is life going to be like when you do that? You will experience what I call LLJB. Now, anybody who heard me speak last time, does anybody remember what LLJB stands for? If you do, shout it out. Love, light, joy, and beauty. You will experience with the divine in charge love, light, joy, and beauty. LLJB. Whoa. Won't that be marvelous? So I'm going to give you some tools. Wrapping it up here, I'm going to give you some tools so that you can have that experience more frequently. Tool number 1, whenever you catch yourself denying who you really are, your magnificence, I want you to go, stop it. Stop it. And instead, change your thinking. Change your thinking and reflect the truth of who you are. And have handy, just in case, have handy some inspirational material that you can listen to or read that will elevate your thoughts and remind you of who you are, your divine self. Okay? Tool number 1. Tool number 2, to shift your attention away from what bothers yourself, ask yourself a question. Right now, in this moment, who is in the driver's seat? Is it ego? Or is it my magnificent divine self? If it's ego, hey, get it in the back seat. You know, imagine, it's clinging to the steering wheel, so tightly, I'm in charge, says the ego. Tell it to relax. Breathe. Get in the back seat. Let the divine be in charge. Now, in case you're not sure, you haven't made a determination between ego and your divine self, ask yourself, in this moment, am I experiencing and being LLJB? If the answer is no, get the ego back there. Let the divine self be in charge. Tool number 3, okay. This is, I'm going to lead you through an exercise. Some of you are going to be really uncomfortable doing this exercise. And if you choose not to do the exercise, I'm going to have you do something else. For those of you who are willing to stretch out of your comfort zone, and for those of you who are excited to do this, here's what's going to happen. You are going to turn to a neighbor. When I say, you are going to turn to a neighbor, and you are going to look into your neighbor's face. And if you're really courageous, you're going to look into your neighbor's eyes. You're going to look beyond the body, beyond the personality, and to the seat of the soul. And if you need to use your imagination, that's okay. What I want you to see is who your neighbor really is. I want you to see their LLJB. I want you to see their love, their light, their joy, and their beauty. And then you are going to say to your neighbor, I see the divine as you. Okay? Now, for those of you who would be intimidated by doing such a thing, here's what you get to do. You get to hold the space with me. You get to be breathing, taking holy breaths, and as you're thinking, I am an extension of the divine, and I see all around me the radiation of love, light, and beauty coming from everyone here. Okay? So you have your choice. And if someone turns to you and you don't want to do it, just say, I'm holding space. Okay? Okay, so go ahead and turn to your neighbor. Look them in the eyes. Everybody got a partner here? Look your neighbor in the eyes. Look beyond the body. Look beyond the personality. And I want you to see, use your imagination if you need to, love, light, joy, and beauty. I see the divine as you, radiating as you. Okay. Very good. Actually, I was going to time it. I was going to have you guys look into each other's eyes for an entire minute. How would that have been? It can be profound, actually, but I just wanted to give you a little taste of it this morning, okay? Okay, one more tool, tool number 4. This one should be easy. Every morning when you look in the mirror, I want you to look beyond your body there in the mirror. I want you to look into your eyes, into the seat of your soul, and I want you to tell yourself, I see the divine radiating as me. Okay, can you do that? Right now, I see in this room, from every single person in this room, the divine radiating from you. And you all are so bright, so beautiful, so magnificent. You are an extension of God, the divine, the creator. Oh my goodness. What an honor to be in your presence. The divine in me sees the divine in you. Namaste. And release. And another holy deep breath in. And we center in the presence of the divine. And we know that we are one with the divine. We too are that. And we know that we may choose how we express throughout the day, throughout our entire lives, that we may express the divine through us. And that is love and light and joy and beauty. May we remember that this is who we are. This is how we may express. No matter what challenges come before us, we are bigger than that. We are bigger than anything that tries to make us feel small. We are bigger, mightier, stronger. We are doing the will of the Creator as we express LLJB. We are the divine, and this is so. And so it is.